what's coming up on the world today. The United Nations Human Rights Agency calls for immediate measures to protect Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. Plus, Hungary opposes the European Union's decision to start membership talks with Ukraine. And now to another war, but this time the Ukraine and Russian war. Russian President Vladimir Putin has discussed the war in Ukraine with his military top brass, including Defense Prime Minister, the Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, and the Chief of General Staff Valery Gerasimov. Pictures released by the Kremlin showed Mr. Putin at meeting with Mr. Shoigu and the General Sergei Ryzhikov, head of the General Staff's main operational directorate at the Southern Military Grouping's headquarters in Rostov. The Kremlin said that Mr. Putin was shown new models of military equipment and heard reports on the progress of the special military operation going on in Ukraine. Mr. Putin last month visited the military headquarters in Rostov, where Wagner mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin began a failed mutiny in June this year. And as Ukraine is seeking to begin talks with the European Union concerning its membership to the bloc, state Hungary is against that decision. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban told State Radio on Friday that the EU must not start membership talks with Ukraine, stressing that this is Hungary's clear stance on the issue. EU countries' leaders are due to decide in mid-December on whether to accept the Commission's recommendation to invite Kiev to begin membership talks as soon as it meets final conditions. Any such decision requires, among other bloc members, 27 of them, with Hungary seen as the main potential obstacle. Nationalist Orban, in power, who's been in power since 2010, said a dispute between Brussels over billions of euros of EU funds suspended for Hungary over a rule of law issue cannot be linked in any way to Hungary's support for Ukraine's EU accession talks. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been speaking on what makes him happy in the midst of the war in his country. He laughed heartily when asked to name one thing that made him smile despite the ongoing conflict in his country. He said his family and his dogs provide moments of light relief. Speaking via video link from the Ukrainian capital, Kiev, Mr. Zelensky said his children and his dogs are always funny. Referring to the other conflicts around the world, including in Gaza, Mr. Zelensky suggested the world might be better if it became the planet of dogs.
Sometimes I have possibility to see my children and my dogs. It's really great. My wife with children and with the dogs, and it's always funny, always funny. Sometimes I'm thinking, really, looking at all these wars, looking at all the crises, Middle East, not only Ukraine, everywhere, in Africa and the Middle East. Sometimes I'm looking at this and think that the best way, if this planet will be the planet of dogs. I don't understand. Sometimes I don't understand people, really. I can't understand. I think that they are just crazy people.
Well, I totally agree with him. I mean, I have 3 dogs, so it's always a good thing. But after a long period of energy uncertainty caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Germans finally believe that they're out of the worst part of the energy crisis. Germany's gas supply is secured, imports are flowing, so are Germans. They are comfortable going into this winter. For more on this, we have with us DW correspondent Warda Imran in Berlin. Thank you very much for joining us on The World today, Warda. And how different is this winter from the last one?
Thanks for having me. This winter feels very different from last winter, even though it's just starting. The winter of 2022 was very worrying. It was the first winter in, I don't know, many, many years when Germany did not have their storage stocks filled with Russian imports. Germany used to be extremely reliant on Russian energy supply, perhaps like no other country in the world. And so when Germany and the European Union stopped consuming Russian oil, it was evident that alternative supplies needed to be secured. Prices were skyrocketing, and as the government scrambled to get alternatives, the German public, in turn, was dazed and advised to be cautious. There were widespread concerns that last year's winter would be extremely cold and limited supplies would put Germany in a very tough spot. Fortunately, that's not how it happened. The weather was mild, and people got through it rather easily. Now, as we go into the second winter, this winter, without Russian supplies yet again, the government here has had enough time to get LNG contracts, solidify imports, build new terminals to put Germany in a comfortable position this year. The angst is less, the worries are less, but they're still there. And the pleasant news is that Germany's gas storage capacities are full.
But what is German's public thoughts about this as winter approaches?
Well, there's relief from energy-related worries, at least. There's an overall positive attitude about facing winter. There's a new study by the German Association of Energy and Water. Basically, this study outlines people's attitudes towards this. And it says that 64% of the Germans surveyed are confident this winter will pass without any major supply issue, even if the situation isn't ideal, or as it used to be. Only 14% expressed concern that there can still be supply shortages. 18% of the people were truly confident that this winter will be comfortable. So if this survey is any indication, it shows that the people kept a close eye on energy-related news and now feeling a bit confident about how things have turned out.
And then what is the government saying about the next few months? What's the plan?
The German government has said good things, positive things. There's a rather rosy forecast from Klaus Müller. He's the president of the Federal Network Agency here, which regulates electricity and gas. He said that the country is in a much better position going into this winter. He also said that gas imports were stable and that gas storage is a bit over 100%, which is good news to all the people here. His forecast that everything would go well is based on 6 scenarios modeled on possible outcomes. Of course, 2 of them are concerning. Now, for example, if Germany is unable to import enough liquefied natural gas, let's say through Belgium or Netherlands maybe, because both these countries face a harsh winter and increase their own consumption, this may leave Germany in trouble. But this isn't likely, he said. Even with imports and energy contracts secured, though, people here are still being advised to be cautious with consuming energy. I think it's the first time that a German government is viewed so much through the lens of their climate policy and to this much extent.
All right, thank you very much, DW correspondent Vardar Imran from Berlin. Thanks for your contribution on the World's Day. Let's move to other stories. Australia has offered refuge to citizens of Tuvalu because of the catastrophic impact of climate change in a landmark new pact. The series of low-lying atolls in the Pacific is among the nations most at risk of rising seas. It is home to 11,200 people. It has repeatedly called for greater action to combat climate change. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also describes it as a groundbreaking agreement. Tuvalu Prime Minister Kusil Natano called it a beacon of hope and not just a milestone, but a giant leap forward in our joint mission to ensure regional stability, sustainability and prosperity. Up to 280 people per year will be granted the new visas, which will allow them to live, work and study in Australia. It is the first time that Australia has offered residency to foreign nationals because of the threat of climate change.
In Tuvalu, we are living the realities of climate change, sea level rise, as you stand watching me today at COP26. We cannot wait for speeches when the sea is rising around us all the time. Climate mobility must come to the forefront. We must take bold, alternative action today to secure tomorrow. Faftailasi, Tuvalu Modetua.
And talking about Australia, it has released a stateless Rohingya man held in immigration detention for years now, following a landmark court ruling that paves way to end the indefinite detention of asylum seekers. The High Court ruled that the man from Myanmar, identified as Neeks, had been in detention after serving jail time for child sexual offences. He has been unlawfully detained as there was no real prospect that he could be removed from Australia in the foreseeable future. The verdict overturns an Australian court ruling about 20 years ago that said indefinite immigration detention was lawful as long as the government had the intention of removing the person from Australia eventually.
That release will happen under the strictest possible conditions. We will, from there, assess the government's position and what steps we can take going forward. Obviously, the full decision of the High Court has not yet been published, and so in determining the way forward from here, we will do so promptly but thoroughly to make sure that what steps are taken going forward are entirely legally robust.
And away from Australia, top cabinet officials of India and the United States have held talks stressing the need to further strengthen their friendship to be able to deal with very urgent challenges in terms of geopolitical and global challenges. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and their Indian counterpart, Foreign Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar and Defense Minister Rajnath Singh all arrived together and posed for the media before taking turns to make opening remarks at the so-called annual 2+2 dialogue. Officials are saying that Friday's talks aim to boost defense cooperation and align the policy objectives of both countries in the Indo-Pacific region.
We are promoting a free and open, prosperous, secure and resilient Indo-Pacific, including by strengthening our partnership through the Quad with Japan and Australia. One significant way we're doing that is by enhancing maritime domain awareness, sharing commercial satellite data with countries in the region to boost their capacity, for example, to combat illegal fishing, piracy, drug trafficking. We're also coordinating humanitarian relief and disaster response efforts in the Indo-Pacific. We're harnessing together the power of innovation to make our economies more resilient and to make our communities more secure while expanding inclusive economic opportunity. That's evident in the cooperation on semiconductors and advanced biotechnology, on our unprecedented investments in deploying clean energy at scale in our countries as well as across the region, and our joint research and exploration projects.
In the face of urgent global challenges, it's more important than ever that the world's two largest democracies exchange views, find common goals, and deliver for our people. We've made impressive gains in building our major defense partnership over the past year, and that will help us contribute even more together to the cause of peace and stability. We're integrating our industrial bases, strengthening our interoperability, and sharing cutting-edge technology. The scope of our cooperation is vast. As our ambassador is fond of saying, it stretches from the seabed to space.
In the 2+2, we will undertake, as we have done before, a comprehensive overview of cross-cutting strategic defense and security ties, technology and supply chain collaborations, and people-to-people exchanges. Our meeting takes place even as we make rapid strides in all aspects of our bilateral agenda. Our trade is today in excess of $200 billion US. FDI is rising in both directions.
South Korea's capital, Seoul, has conducted pest control measures ahead of the country's nationwide Exterminate Bedbug campaign after reports of suspected infestations. Seoul Mayor of Sehon held a meeting on bedbugs with experts in the city office fumigated seats on subway trains and hot steam residential areas where 3 cases were reported. Earlier this week, the government announced a 4-week campaign with inspections of public facilities and pest control measures, which will begin next Monday, October the 13th. In South Korea, about 30 cases of suspected infestations have been reported nationwide. including a traditional Korean spa called Jim J. Blang in Incheon, which is west of Seoul, and the college dormitory in the southeastern city of Daegu. And finally, London's Battersea Power Station marks the opening of its popular festive ice rink with an evening for invited guests. The ice rink, named Glide, is composed of 3 interconnecting rings with a large Christmas tree as its centerpiece. Revelers can also ride a festive carousel present at that site, as well as book Lift 109, which is a glass elevator that takes visitors to the top of the landmark's chimney to offer a 360-degree view of London's skyline. This attraction is set to open to the public on Friday. The 1930s power station once supplied a fifth of London's electricity, including to Buckingham Palace and Parliament, but is better known for featuring alongside a floating inflatable pig on the cover of Pink Floyd's 1977 album Animals. The once derelict site has now been redeveloped into offices, shops, and apartments. Well, that sure looks like a fun place to visit. On that note, we end the World Today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Anne Nwawado. Have a wonderful weekend.